Hi there. In this screencast, we'll take a look at how we create a brand new company file with Sage 50. So I'm just going to fire up my Sage 50. I'm using version 2020. You can use whatever you have. It's all pretty much the same. There's been a couple of differences from 2016. When I open up 2020, and I know this is different from some operating systems, but I get this little start window. So I always make sure I never ever check this box. Otherwise, your choices, it makes it difficult to restore a company from backup if you don't already have a company open. So I'm going to create a new company and choose OK. And it lets you know it's a 6-step process. 1 and 6, nothing happens, so it's actually a 4-step process. So we choose next. Whatever you enter here is not set in stone. It's all editable via setup settings company info, but I'm just going to add a bit of information here. So whatever your company name is, I'm getting this information from a file that I'm sharing with my students in the Langara course, but you could just add whatever you want for your company. If you're actually working with an actual company, you could enter their information, of course. What's important here is the province. That'll determine the tax codes that are set up for us when we open our company. If I remember, I'll show you that. So notice that I'm not sure how this works for other companies, but since Sage 50 was originally a Canadian product, there's an input filter applied to postal codes, so you don't have to enter capitals. Once you leave that field, everything's capitalized and a space gets added. We will be looking at multiple currencies in a later screencast, so of course country becomes important then. I'm not sure, again, I've only worked with Canadian data sets as I'm in Canada, but if you use United States, you may get different tax codes. I'm not certain about that. I think it also depends on the version of the software you're using. And same thing with the phone number. There's an input filter applied to that. Once I leave that field, the brackets, spaces, and dashes get added. So you don't have to worry about typing those. And that's all I'll add for now. Again, none of this is set in stone. You can always change it and set up settings, company information. Choose next. Same thing with the fiscal year. So in this scenario, the company that we're doing the books for has been using an outside accounting system, such as a paper-based accounting system or Excel spreadsheets or something like that, for the first 2 months, January and February of the year. So our fiscal year starts at the beginning of the year. So I'm just going to enter Jan 1, 17, and you'll notice when I tab out of the field, Sage does a good job of guessing what we meant by that. We can use a 3-letter abbreviation. So that's my preferred method of entering dates in Sage 50 is a 3-letter abbreviation. And our earliest transaction in this new accounting system, basically is what it's asking, will be March 1st. Fiscal year end still ends at the end of December. And if you want to have a fully populated chart of accounts, you want to leave it that option. Building a chart of accounts from scratch is very time consuming, so I would always use this choice. But if you want to try to build your own chart of accounts, you can make that choice. I'm not going to get into that. That's very, very fiddly. So we're working with a sole proprietorship, but notice that we do have the ability to have an incorporated business, and we're going to be creating a retail, and retail company is what we'll use. We'll take a look at the chart of accounts later on once we create this data set, and I'll choose next. Name of the company file, that's a fine name, and I'm going to throw mine on my desktop so it's easy to find. I'll just throw it into a folder, temporary folder that I use, so I know that it's safe to delete the files out of, and finish. So this will take a moment, and once it's set up, depending on your processor speed and how much RAM you have, where the company file is stored. For example, if it's in a directory on your LAN, this may take a little bit longer. Took no time at all for my operating system. I'm just using Windows 7, and I'll choose close. And here's my brand new company. So if you notice, if I go to company chart of accounts, let me just resize that so you can see the whole thing. Of course, we have a typical chart of accounts for a retail company. Depending on what type of industry and business type you choose, you'll get a different chart of accounts, maybe slightly different. And if I look at my taxes, again, because I chose BC as a region, you'll see that I have PST 7%, GST 5%, so no HST, as opposed to if you chose Ontario or something like that. So that's basically creating a brand new company from scratch. We'll work with this a little bit more in future screencasts, customizing the chart of accounts and adding balances and whatnot. Thanks so much for watching.